Welcome to the School Owner Talk podcast, the longest-running martial arts school owner podcast in our industry. Join Duane Brumitt and Allie Alberigo as they share expert insights, proven strategies, and the keys to growing your martial arts business. Let's take your school to the next level. And now here's our hosts, Duane and Allie.
All right. Hello and welcome back to School Owner Talk. Of course, I'm Duane Brumitt.
And I'm Allie Alberigo, and I'm here today. I'm awake, and I'm ready to stir the pot a little. Even though that I had a late start this morning, I didn't go for breakfast, but I watched a little bit of my favorite TV show, got up, made it the family breakfast, and then got to my computer and started working.
Yeah, and you had to dig yourself out of a snowstorm, right?
Oh my God, it was so. We ran a tournament on Sunday. It's unbelievable at how the media scares the heck out of people, right? So Sunday is the tournament. On Saturday morning at 5 a.m., and I know you think I'm crazy because people have my cell phone number on the website. I start getting phone calls at 5 a.m. on Saturday, long before any possibility of snow. Are you open? Are you canceling the tournament? Is there, what the snow? Are we going to drive in this weather? I'm like, in this weather, it's 42 degrees out right now. Like, I thought it was going to stay that way the whole weekend. I knew we were going to have a snowstorm. And then, of course, that continued on. Probably 50 to 80 phone calls I received from people. Some people were far away, Pennsylvania, way upstate New York, Albany. So they were getting snow before we did on the island. But at the same time, I'm like, how do I answer this question? Of course we're going to run the tournament. I can't not run it based on the fear that it may snow. And what happened was it didn't snow the entire day. We had a massive turnout, 300 competitors, like 900 spectators. It was insane. And it started snowing at about 3:40. We were almost done with our last division. So we wrapped it up by 4:30 and we were packing up the truck. People were going home and it started to snow.
That was perfect timing. That was their last outing before they were stuck in for a couple of days.
Exactly. And it was a blizzard. I mean, we had snow drifts. Like, I have a picture of my school I took yesterday with my black belt Dylan in front of the snowdrift in front of the school. He's got his hands up and the snowdrift is like 8.5 foot tall, where the plows kept plowing and piling and plowing and piling. It's massive. It's incredible.
Well, my wife was jealous because she was like, why didn't we get that? And I'm like, I look at her like, what are you talking about? I don't want that.
I know how she feels though. Like, I said, like, look, if it snowed on Monday or Sunday into Monday, I'm happy. Like, I'll stay in, I'll watch TV, I'll cook a nice meal, I'll relax. I actually waited till like late afternoon on Tuesday. My guys came and snow blowed me out, cleaned my driveway. I was okay with that. And then I went into the dojo on Tuesday and I taught, but it was slow.
Yeah. I mean, that's an iffy time period, right?
Yeah, you just never know.
And like sometimes, we talked about this before, you feel guilty closing. I mean, that's just and that shows where your heart is. So that's a good thing, even though, yeah.
I call it the guilt of closing.
The guilt of closing. Yeah.
Right? Like, I used to always be that guy when I first opened. I mean, I thought, New Year's Day, I'd do a class because people wanted it, right? Like, and people would show, like, back in the day. But now, like, for example, yesterday I was open. Everyone knew it. I probably had like 20 kids in the first class, maybe like 10 in the second, and then maybe like 8 in the third. So I was there, they got a good class, but at the same time, you look at it and you go like, why, what, maybe I should have just stayed home. Most of the other people were saying the same thing. I'll just stay home tonight. Like, it's cold out, it's snowy out. Why bother? Like, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's only one day.
Yeah.
Right.
Only one day. Yeah. Yeah. And for us, like, cause we have either you come Monday, Wednesday, you come Tuesday, Thursday. So, if we closed on Monday and then we were open on Tuesday, then Tuesday, the Tuesday class would have gotten one more day, type thing. But
right. I like that idea, the way you do that. But at the same time, in my area, I think people would lynch me if I closed down just because we do an AB schedule, but it's loose. Like, you could come on Monday, Wednesday, or you could come on Tuesday, Thursday. Most people stick to that, but sometimes they make a makeup. So I'm like, I'll just, whatever day it is we close, whoever has classes on that day loses out. And then they could always make it up if they wanted to do a double session or anything else.
Well, and that's for us. That's why we have our open mat times on Fridays, so they can
Yeah,
come in and they can work on anything that they've missed, even if we closed. So,
right. That's
uh,
awesome.
so, so today's one of those topics. I think that it may sound kind of like a small thing, but it actually quietly makes your school either feel smooth or and professional, or it may feel some chaos,
Right. Well,
right?
I love the word chaos. In Japanese, that's a word called randori. You see it in judo, like continual flow and action. But the actual kanji to chaos is to seize chaos. To the randori is to seize chaos, right? So like, what do we do to control the chaos, right? So if it feels like chaos, so be it, as long as you got it under control, right? And I think it's something almost every owner deals with at some point or another, or on a regular basis at their schools, is dealing with those things.
Right. And what specifically we're talking about today, we're going to kind of call it the fun instructor problem.
Right.
So now, listen, let's be clear right up front that we're not anti-fun in this podcast episode, okay? I want to draw that
Right.
out.
Right. Right. Yeah. No fun is good. Fun is necessary, right? Like, we want to have. When my teacher would teach whatever it was that we were doing, they'd say, let's play. Let's do this. Let's want to have a game, and we would grapple whoever won, right? We'd spar whoever won. Sometimes you would go hard on each other, but it was the mentality of fun, not like just sitting there and drilling and no happiness, no enjoyment, just drill, drill, drill. People will quit if that's the case.
Yeah, exactly. So, what we're going to be talking about is, what happens when the standards really um, uh, change depending on who's teaching. So, you may have, one instructor where the kids line up and they're respectful, they're
Right.
focused, they're into it, and then you have another instructor where kids are climbing all over each other,
Right.
maybe even talking over that instructor, pushing the boundaries. The whole vibe is just different.
Oh, doubt, no doubt, dude. Like that, I've had that just recently with one of my main instructors who was with me for a long time had left, and I constantly remind them. Like, I'll give you an example. I was just telling my wife about it yesterday. I have this little girl, adorable kid. I love her to death, but she would always, I'd see her like hitting the instructor, like pushing the instructor, just being cute and playful, like, talking back to the instructor. And then I saw a lot of people, would the instructor be talking, they would talk over him. Or in our school, we're very particular at the way we sit, seiza, anza, or hiza seiza, one knee, cross-legged position, or sitting on top of your knees like traditional Japanese. And that's the only way you're supposed to sit in a martial arts school. Like, I remember when I was in Japan, I had the gout. My leg was swollen like a balloon. So I told my teacher, Sensei, Tanimura Sensei, I said, listen, I have the gout. I showed him. He's like, oh, that looks hurt, like pain. And I'm like, yeah, it's super painful. He goes, oh, you could sit with your leg out so you don't have to bend and cross your leg. And as he would teach the technique, he'd walk up behind me and smack me in the head really hard and say, fix your leg. And I say, Sensei, remember? Okay, no problem. Like, but I knew he was doing that because he just wanted everyone to see you don't sit like me. That's a special case, and he was really setting me straight, even though he knew I had a reason behind it, a specific reason that I had to do it. But it's wild to see that with teachers.
Yeah. And the problem too really is, like when you're the owner and you walk in and you see some of those things going on, you're like, what the heck's happening?
Right,
Right. And then you correct it. And the problem is then when you correct it, then you're suddenly the bad guy.
right. Absolutely, dude. Yeah, like the fun instructor, it's like being the fun parent. Like you get two parents, they're divorced, right? And whoever the mom or the dad is the disciplinarian and the other one's the fun parent, right? Like, stay up late, have ice cream, drink soda, because they're gonna go back to their mom or dad and they're gonna have to be disciplined and live a life, so the kids are gonna see that and want to be with the fun parent. It's like school teachers that in public school that let you get away with murder, talking back, being funny, not doing your homework and all that stuff. It doesn't help the student. So you have to have some way of fun, but discipline
Well,
fun
and
and
sometimes,
control.
yeah, and I was going to say sometimes in schools, it's not the teacher. It is actually the administration, meaning the teacher wants to follow through with it, sends them to the principal's office, but the principal, it's just a slap on the hand or just a
Right.
talk. It's not
Right.
yeah. So, and now the bigger issue I think with this is, when this is happening, it's not just that you guys have different teaching styles. You start to build a subculture inside of your
Mm.
school.
Yeah. Yeah. You're teaching them that it's okay.
Yeah, and then you have two schools in one.
Never works. And dude,
No.
I look, here's a perfect example. I don't know if you saw on your news, but in Manhattan with our new and I'll be clear, I try not to be too political, but at the same time our new mayor is absolute crap. Right? And but they're throwing, I don't know if you saw, they're like throwing chunks of ice and snow at all the cops, hitting them in the face with snow. And the cops are literally in retreat because what could they do? They can arrest you or get into an altercation or try to get out of there. And there, it's like a madhouse, like a mass, like a gang of people throwing ice and snow at the cops. I'm like, the only way that's going to stop is if those people get reprimanded, and I mean like either physically or thrown in jail for the night or get a massive fine. But if you allow this, like the mayor was like, oh, it's like a snowball fight. No, you don't throw snow. Try to throw a piece of snow at the president or the Secret Service. Like what that guy walked into Mar-a-Lago with a shotgun and got killed immediately.
Yeah.
There's no chance to allow this behavior to happen, right? So you have to nip it in the bud at your martial arts school to make sure that doesn't happen.
Exactly. And the problem is that it creates confusion for the kids. It's
Hmm.
frustration also for the parents, but really stress for the whole staff. And over time, it will hurt retention.
Absolutely. And retention, yes, with people quitting or not coming as much, but at the same time, like that, not only will it hurt retention, but it'll hurt the future culture of your school, right? Because people don't know how to act.
Well, yeah, and kids don't follow rules, they follow patterns. And
Exactly.
so if you're not creating that consistent pattern for them, then like we said, you're creating two different cultures in your school. You have two schools in one. And so in this
Yeah.
episode, we're gonna our hope is that we're gonna break down what the fun instructor problem really is,
Hmm.
why it happens, and really what's the cost of ignoring it. Excuse me, and really some practical fixes,
Hmm.
some non-negotiables, maybe some class formatting,
Yeah.
correcting scripts, and then how to coach an instructor without creating that drama, if you will.
Yeah. And you know what? I call it formatting. It's like coding on a computer. If you miss one single code, that whole line or script is not going to work properly, right? So if you allow there to be certain holes or functions that are not supposed to be done, but they're being done and you're just letting it slide, that's going to be bad for your whole school. And we'll also talk about the hard, which is the hard part, is when it's not fixable because sometimes it's not. What do we do? Like, what's that
Yep.
about?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, exactly. So if you've ever walked into your school and you thought, what, we're not running the same program every single class. What the heck's going on? I would tell you that this is the podcast for you.
Yeah, it's almost like when we do a podcast, like sometimes we come up with it ahead of time. Sometimes I come up with an idea or you come up with an idea, but this time I think you're kind of have a camera in my school and you're looking and you're seeing into my brain because don't forget I took a long period of time where I was very minimally in my school and I had one main guy running it. And by the way, he did a great job, but he didn't have the vast experience that I had. So he's doing well with what he had, right? And then when I would coach him and encourage him or correct, he never really took that to heart. So it slowly had this decline of our protocol and the ethics and the morality in our school. And I was telling a parent yesterday, she goes, ever since you started really taking over, my kid is really working much harder. And I said, it's not me necessarily, it's my standard of what I see. like I always tell the kids, do a horse dance, and I go, okay, that Freddie, oh my God, that if I had a notebook and your horse dance picture was in the notebook, you'd be the picture. That's how good your horse dance is. Because so you have to recreate standards in your school. So we call them standards. You could call them, whatever. But I think that that's super important. So let's get into it. Let's lay it out.
Yep. Yeah. So the moment that you walk in your school and you realize that, it has different rules depending on who's teaching.
Yeah.
We're kind of defining that as the fun instructor problem. And,
right.
It's not really about fun. It's really about inconsistent and mixed expectations. So here's a few ideas on why this might be happening. The instructor, they're wanting to be liked.
Right.
They maybe want to avoid conflict.
Mm-hmm.
There's some unclear standards.
Right.
Lack of training them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Or no shared script on how to handle those type of situations. And so, if there's a problem where you have an instructor that you identify as doing these things because they're wanting to be liked, you really need to breach that conversation or breach that that situation with a conversation,
right?
And let them know that they're up there. And this is what I tell my staff: your job is to be friendly, firm, and fair.
I like that.
That's it. The 3 F's: friendly, firm, and fair.
Beautiful.
You're not their friend, but you're friendly. You're not angry, but you're going to be firm with them. And in every situation, you're going to be fair.
I like it. It's like the 3 S's: sweating, smiling, and striving for more, or whatever it is, right? Friendly, firm, and fair. I like it.
And when you create that standard for them, then it allows them to have a framework to work from. Mm-hmm. And then it gives you opportunity to revisit, like for us, to revisit those 3 F's if we see that there's a lack in their training. So for instance, if they did something and it wasn't to the standard that we like, we can ask them, okay, out of the 3 F's, which do you feel like you exercised and were able to do in that incident?
Right.
And which one or ones were you not able to do?
Right.
And so we have them analyze that and go, okay, maybe I was their friend. I wasn't friendly. Mm-hmm. Because there's a line.
Oh,
or
absolutely.
Maybe I wasn't firm enough. I was friendly, but I wasn't firm enough.
Right.
Most of the time, they're fair because they know what's right and wrong. For the most part, that's usually not the issue. It's the friendly and firm thing that is hard for them, and specifically for younger instructors. With let's say you got a 15-year-old that's teaching a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old. They're sometimes too friendly.
Yeah.
And then
that's like the substitute teacher syndrome, right? Where they're not used to the person, so they don't respect them.
Yeah, exactly. But then sometimes if they're teaching older kids, so let's say they're 15, but they have somebody that's on the floor that's 17, they sometimes are not firm enough.
Right.
Because they're thinking, oh, they're older than me. Or even if it's an adult that they're helping, well, they're older than me. Well, no, you still need to be friendly and firm. Look, this is the way that it's done. Here's why it's done this way. This is the way that we're going to perform it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that.
So just having those clear standards, I think, makes it important, because what you allow actually becomes the culture.
Right.
And like I already said before, kids follow they follow patterns, and if we're not careful, those subcultures can form really, really quick.
Right. Oh, no doubt.
And so all of our instructors have to be friendly, firm, and fair. Yeah. And we, as the owners, we need to teach them how to do that, what our expectations are inside of that framework. And then when we see it's not being performed, we have to follow up with them and figure out why it's happening and then coach them through that.
Yep,
Does
absolutely.
that does that make sense?
Totally makes sense. Like I could think of a few examples, but one example is this. If I'm teaching class, I stand in a position so that I could see the entire class. I've had
Hmm.
instructors that may turn to the right and talk to the people on the right while the kids on the left are goofing around, right? Or vice versa. Or you're in the back of the room when you should be. So I watch my class and I immediately correct. Like I don't give it space. Like, okay, I won't say anything now. I'll do it later. Like, how come you? I always ask my kids, is that the way we sit as ninja? Is that the position? We have three positions. We're in either one or two, Anza or Seiza right now. So how do we sit? And then they fix it, right? Like we don't, when we sit Indian style with our legs crossed, we have our fists on our knees so that we're sitting forward rather than leaning back and putting our hands behind us and leaning back. And that's why our fists are on our knees. So we can't do the other thing. So, and it's always about building technique, building a standard, making sure that everyone adheres to that standard. And that's important, especially for new kids that are brand new or kids that have ADD or ADHD or, any of the other, deficit disorders, like, whatever, we got to stay on top of it.
Well, and they will form to those patterns. If you
Hmm.
create those standards, they'll conform to those
Yes,
patterns because they want to, especially kids, they're going to want to follow and be like everybody else.
correct.
Especially in like the 3 to 7 year old age range because they want to please, right?
Right,
And
right,
so our advice would be, I think, pick, especially in the beginning when you're introducing this to your staff, because you've got to do it and then your staff has to follow through with it. Maybe pick 3 to 5 non-negotiables
hmm
that they need to start focusing in on for the next month or 2 months or whatever.
right,
And so what I mean by that is the way we line up is the way we line up.
right,
Maybe that's a non-negotiable for you.
correct.
The way that we bow, see, that's non-negotiable to me.
Absolutely.
So, it can't come to attention and let their arms fall down and just to kind of do this. Their knuckles are dragging on the ground when they're bowing. That's not a respectful bow. And it may seem like a small thing, but it is a huge thing in the grand scheme of things. For me, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, or no, ma'am.
Right,
And it's funny because I just read, and this was back, I'd have to go back and look. It was, how Facebook has memories.
right. Yeah,
I think this was from like 2016 or 15 or whatever. But a mom was writing about our studio and said that, one of the things that she appreciated the most was the standards that we expected our students to be held up to. So
right.
much so, she goes, um, she was talking about the leadership interviews that we do. And she can remember specifically where the kids were supposed to say whatever, da da da, and then sir.
Right.
And they didn't say sir. And
Hmm.
she's writing this and she goes, and then Mr. Brumitt was silent.
Mm.
And it was an uncomfortable silence until my kid or kids figured out that they were supposed to put sir in there. And then yes, sir.
Yeah.
But she was writing about the fact that I gave them space to figure out what they were supposed to do. And then I waited for them to do it and figure it out. And then they said it. But the
Yeah.
point in all of that was the fact that there was a standard that I expected. So as a school owner, you really need to pick, maybe 3 to 5 non-negotiables that you're going to work with your staff with and go, maybe it's the yes sir, no sir. Maybe it's the eye contact. Maybe it's, their how they hold their attention position or time position or, their ready stance position. But just to keep that standard in the class, and so there's a pattern for them to follow is going to be really, really important.
Okay. Yeah. I love it. Standardizing standards within a school. We could call them different things: protocol, a system. What a rank requirement, right? But like when I remember because I've trained in Japan and I've been with a Japanese instructor, and you either did it the way you're supposed to, or he would kick you out of the school. I mean, some people would travel to Japan. I know one person who traveled all the way to Japan and forgot his pants. So he asked
Yeah.
Sensei, he said, "Can I borrow a pair of pants?" He says, "Borrow pants? I don't understand." Like he is oblivious to this comment. He said, "No, you go to Tokyo and buy new pants until you get them, no training." So it took him like 2 days, and it paid $300 for a pair of gi pants, right? Just because that's just the way it was. And it's sad though. I don't know if you find this in your school, Dwayne, too, and I think a lot of people could attest to this, is that parents don't help us with the standards. So, like, kids will show up without their uniform or partial uniform, or they're supposed to wear a shirt with our logo on it, but yet they have a New York Yankees shirt or Yu-Gi-Oh or some other stuff. And I'm like, I don't understand. Like the pants, they're wearing a pair of jeans. I'm like, ma'am, you can't come to the class like that. Like, and we do this in our onboarding. We send out messages. I have a video. I have a picture of the uniform or what it consists of. People still like, yeah, but it was in the laundry. Okay, well, then I guess you can't train or buy a second one. Like people don't have shirts. I go, now I'm a little harder. I'm like, you can't train with that shirt. So if you want, you could buy a shirt. But I always feel bad. My internal message to myself is like, do I want to lose them? Do I want to piss them off? Do I want them to be upset with me? But how do you hold standards? Like every week we have a theme of the week or what weapon we're practicing or sparring or whatever. And they're probably about 60% of the people will come prepared. The other 40% not. It's very
Yeah. Well,
difficult.
that's why we came up with responsibility strikes.
Right.
And let me explain this to the listener. So we have attitude strikes and we have responsibility strikes, and it's all in our code of conduct that parents have to read and sign off on. Now, whether they read it or not, doesn't matter. They signed off on it.
Right.
But so in a testing cycle, which is a 3-month cycle, they can forget a piece of their clothing, their uniform, or if it's time where they have their sparring gear and they have to bring their sparring gear to every single class, even if we don't, even if we're not sparring. But if they forget, let's say their belt. So I'll give you for instance, last Thursday, I had a kid who did not bring his t-shirt underneath his uniform, the prescribed t-shirt. And I said, sir, that's one strike against you. I have to go put your name on my clipboard.
Okay.
And then at the end of the night, we go into Spark, and anybody that has been entered, because we put a date.
Right.
And then we go to their name and we have a tag inside of Spark called Strike One. It's a Strike One responsibility. And so that tag gets labeled to them, and then there's an automation that gets fired. And here's why this is important. A text message is then sent to the parents saying that your child forgot an article of their responsibility, their responsibility to bring an article of their required uniform to class today. This is only one strike against them. But just as a reminder, if they get 4 strikes in a testing cycle, they're not allowed to test, and they have to do that whole belt all over again. So that automation gets fired, and I immediately have the tag then removed the next day. So that tag doesn't stay there just because, I don't want it to stay there. If they get a second strike, so this same kid yesterday, strike number 2,
Right.
came in, didn't have it again. So at the end of the night, I gave him strike number 2. I had a verbal conversation, hey, sir, you do realize this is your second strike. You're testing next month. If you get 4 strikes, you're not testing. You're going to start this all over again, and you're going to do this 3-month cycle again. And so then that automation fires, a text message gets sent to the parent. Hey, this is the second time in this testing quarter that your child has forgotten an article of their uniform.
Right.
To bring I forget what it says. Here's a link for you to set up a phone call with me. We need to discuss this.
Okay.
And it's the parent's responsibility to do it.
Yeah.
And then a third time this happens. Again, automation fires. This time, we tell them this is their third time. One more, they don't test. We need to have an in-person meeting with you and your child.
Yes.
So see the program director and set up an in-person meeting. And then we have an in-person meeting. And if it happens a fourth time, they don't test, and they do that 3 months over again. Now, I have had students quit and leave. I've had students quit and leave and go to another school because of these standards. But we are not willing to lower the standard for almost any reason. And when I say almost any reason, I have done some things in the past where there's been a death in the family, and something very, very traumatic has happened.
Right.
A fire where they lost everything.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little bit different. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
But
there's certain things that you may in extreme situations make and have an understanding for them.
but we give them chances, but we are still in contact with the parent each time.
See, does
that make sense?
It totally makes sense. And I'm sitting back in my chair. For those that are watching, could probably see that I'm listening intently on what you're saying. And as a school owner for 34 years that I've been doing this, I've always had high standards in my school. But I think those high standards are more verbal versus more physical follow-up. Like, you have a system. They don't come prepared. They get a reminder, they get an email, then they're held accountable. If they do it a second time, now you have a meeting. And I'll give you a really quick story. So one time I was in Bermuda at the school I have down there, and that school's still in place, still operating, but very, very, very tiny now. But anyway, I was down there when we were at the peak. We were the largest school on the island. So I was excited because the owner that was with me, partner, was his kid had Little League baseball. So I said, he goes, "You want to come to the game before we teach?" I'm like, "Sure, I don't have nothing to do." I was by myself. So I went to the game. In my head, I'm thinking, like, I can't wait to see how disciplined and how respectful and how amazing these kids are. It's Bermuda, after all, super highly successful entrepreneurs, millionaires, etc. I get to the game and I'm shocked to see that they're worse than we are. They have like 80% of the team didn't bring their mitt or their hat. So like between each inning, they're going, "Okay, who lent my son their mitt and the hat?" And every inning took an additional 15, 20 minutes because they had to find out who had forgotten what they forgot. And I go, "Does this happen all the time?" He goes, "Yeah, all the time. People come, they just show up to the game. They're not even in their uniform. We have an official game and they have uniforms, but they're in jeans." I go, "Do you let them play?" They're like, "Yeah, they let them play. They just go about it." So like there's no standard there, but there's also what you have done. You put in place a system to make sure the parents and the students understand that there are going to be consequences, right?
Absolutely.
So and if you don't have those, like I tell people all the time, I got one grandmother just recently. I said, his Jackson needs to have his shirt. "Oh, it was in the laundry," and the mother. I said, "Okay, listen, it's okay. This one time is fine." Another time they came in, I said, "Ma'am, I can't let him train without his shirt." So I said, "If you want, you go bring him back to another class this week, or you could buy a shirt right now." And then my grandmother was pissed. She actually looked at me in the eyes and said, "I don't like you at all," she said to me. And I'm like, "I know you don't. And you don't like me because you're mad at yourself, not me, because I didn't do anything wrong," right? It's the standard. It's what you're supposed to have. So I also had a foam nunchuck day the other day where we did a whole week, and I walked into the lobby. I said, like 25 kids don't have their foam nunchucks. It's a beginner level requirement when you first join. I said, "I just got a bunch in. They're on the wall. Just pick your color. If you want, my program manager could charge out your card and I could go bring them in the class." They looked at me like I was insane. They were like, like when they say if you run into a dog and it's angry, you don't look him in the eyes and you look away. You pretend that he's not there. That's what they all did. They looked away and they stayed quiet. Not one person bought the nunchucks for $22. And I was doing a 20% off sale if they bought it right away. But I'm like,
Right.
how do you look at the monitor and see that the majority of the kids have their stuff and you have an opportunity to buy it right now? I mean, it's not like it's $150, $200 that it's $22, right? And nothing. So I wonder about those standards and go like, how, I don't know if my dojo would still be open if I said, okay, no one's training today. Those kids can't train because they're not prepared.
Well, yeah, but they would learn real quick, wouldn't they?
Or they would quit, like you said, and some of them go to another school. So it's like you kind of have to weigh out and you go like, you know that old parent saying where they go pick your battles wisely, choose your battles wisely? Like, so I always have that dilemma in the back of my head saying, do I push the envelope really hardly? But I have to say, I'll tell you this, when I was younger and I was hard nosed, I had less problems because it was my way or the highway and I didn't give a crap. If you didn't like it, quit, go somewhere else. Just don't be a part of my school. It was different now where I'm understanding and patient and compassionate and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I think we can be understanding, patient, and compassionate, but I also think we have to draw the line.
Right.
But the line has to be drawn where the standards were presented first,
Right.
and then the line can be drawn. And so if a school owner is looking to, create some of these things, when it's created, then it needs to be presented to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't already have these types of standards, like what I was talking about with regards to the responsibility strikes, then, if you create those, then present them to everybody. And then everyone new has to be presented with them as well, so that they at least,
Of course.
said that they heard about them. Now, whether or
Yeah.
not they do them are two different things. In fact, I actually have that in my price video that I send them as well, because,
Nice.
not only do I talk about what the price of the program is and all those things, I let them know up front, like, here's the responsibility strikes. Here is the attitude strikes. Cause I have,
Right.
if it's the attitude is incorrect, I have a way of, formulating that as well. And eventually giving somebody time off or kicking them out in total if needed. So, or permanently if needed. So I understand that it does affect the bottom line.
Yeah.
I get that.
But
But
it may affect the bottom line in a good way too, because
I
you're bringing in people that really care, that really listen, that really want to adhere to the rules and do what they're supposed to do. Now you have way more good students than you do with a few that are bad.
well, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
And so if you have students that are sliding by and trying to cut corners, if they're doing it on those things, they're going to do it on other things.
Right.
And are those the individuals that you want to keep?
Right.
You don't mind influencing them if it's going to be an influence where it changes them.
Right.
And for some people, it will change them.
Right.
But, I'm open and honest about the 3-strike rule.
Yeah.
And I let them know that this is a problem with some parents. And usually the problem is with the parent. Yes, the kid is disappointed, heartbroken, distraught.
Right.
But usually the parent is not only heartbroken and distraught, they are angry.
Right. Right.
And some will just leave and not allow their kid, and I'd say it, not allow their kid the opportunity to learn how to step up to responsibility.
Yeah.
They run from it.
Yeah.
And do their child a disservice. And I say that.
Right. But that's a good majority of people these days. We are in like a very antiquated mindset right now where it's like the old school mindset, right? Almost like it's really not old school. Like old school, when we say old school, it's about fighting hard and brutality and, that old militant discipline. But really, we're talking about people with a new generation of people that don't live within the lines of responsibility. I mean, just look at it when people just decide not to come anymore. They just cancel their credit card, even though they signed an agreement that they're supposed to pay every month. They literally do not give a crap. They don't care.
You're right.
Their word, You know, like I had a mom the other day said, "Oh, we have to move out of town." I said, "Well, keep on training until you move. Then when you move and you show me proof of residency, I could allow you out of your agreement with the cancellation fee. You're going to make me pay a cancellation?" Like they immediately shifted. "Oh, you're all about the money, aren't you?" I'm like, I went from being like, I always joke because one parent kind of compared me to Tony Robbins and Hitler at the same time. I'm like, what are you talking about? Tony Robbins helps people. Hitler was a crazy person. Oh no, well, you both brainwash people and you do what you want and you do and you run the. I'm like, no, I'm trying to run a school to help your child. Like, but they don't care. Sometimes the parents. I don't say parents don't care. They don't have the energy to care or the understanding on how they could get through that obstacle. Like what you just said, teaching responsibility. Like that, they're not able to do it. They're so busy, inundated, exhausted, tired, getting hit from all different areas. But I commend you, Duane, on being able to do that.
Well, look, I thank you. With regards to school owners, if you see a problem and it's a consistent problem, there's a breakdown of a pattern that is not being executed. You yourself probably had a pattern that you did, but you didn't necessarily teach it to the next generation of your staff in a way
Right.
that saying that this is the standard that we want to be doing. And so um, like an easy one is for me, I saw a pattern for like my storm team, which those are the individuals that are learning how to teach,
Right.
where when they would come out on the floor, they really didn't know what they were supposed to do
Right.
when let's say during warm-ups.
Right.
And so they would congregate, they would hover. So they would do what we call huddling. They would huddle with each other and just basically talk to each other while
Right.
the warm up was going on, or they would hover over you know a group of students just because they liked those students, and they would just kind of hover over them and even
Right.
sometimes joke around with them.
Yep.
So I had to deal with a concept called huddling, and I had to deal with a concept called hovering, and why
Mm-hmm.
the two can't exist. And so I always said that, you have to be, let's say there's two, let's for example, two storm team members that are helping out with class. You both need to be on opposite ends of the room.
Right.
You can't be together. If there's
Right.
four, then you need to be in the four corners of the room.
Uh,
And then I came up with the quadrants on the floor.
yeah.
And so during a warm up, I would say, all right, your responsibility is this quadrant, this quadrant, this quadrant, and this quadrant. So let's say I had four people and you divide it into fours. All right, you have quadrant one, you have quadrant two, you have quadrant three, you have quadrant four. Here's what your responsibilities are during that. And so I created that framework so that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see a problem that's occurring, maybe come up with some sort of pattern or framework that you can teach to them and then have them follow that framework. Does that kind of make sense?
Totally. I love it. I wrote it down actually because I like it. I talk about that all the time with my leadership team and my instructors, where I got annoyed one time with two of my black belts because I'm teaching and they're on the floor chatting. I go, and I'm trying to run from here to there and do this and do that. And they're sitting there talking. I go, this is, and the one instructor got mad at me and I said, this is an absolute waste. He goes, did you just say that what I'm doing is a waste? I said, absolutely. Because I'm running the whole entire class. I have two of you out there just chatting with each other, smiling, laughing, and doing your own thing. Why are you even here? What's the sense of it all? Help me out. Help me run the class. Jump into action. A belt falls off. Retie it. Someone needs assistance. Help them, etc., etc. So we talked about, and I'm going to pull us back into our topic because I'm sure that I derailed it in some way. But we had said
Well, this
that
is still the same.
yeah, we had the whole entire thing with the three things that we want to make sure that we do, the 3 to 5 non-negotiables, right? So we also had coaching staff, which we were just talking about, without drama, private feedback, video reviews, which is very good, by the way. Video reviews really tell a story. When I do coaching for school owners, they might be doing all the systems that I tell them to do business wise, but they're still having a hard time with retention and instruction and so on. And when I watch their classes, they are like watching wet paint dry. Like there's no energy, no excitement. It's so boring that anybody would be bored, right? So it's important for us to make sure that we give them the feedback, we give them the tools, the videos are all real important, and so on, right? So that's super, super important. And then we talked about when it's not fixable, right? If they don't follow the
Oh gosh,
program,
yeah.
right? They're not a fit. If the students are disrespectful, or you have a parent that no matter what, they never show up on time or prepared. So you have to ask yourself, like, why are you here? The real question is, do you want my help, or did you just want to sign them up with hopes that things would manifest? And I've had people say that to me. Don't worry, you'll fix my kid. You're the one who's going to fix him. I go, I can't fix him if you're not helping me and doing the right thing either, right? And then we want to talk about, or we did talk about that, trying to make these corrections and being on top of it immediately. But what do we say? What do you say, Duane, when it's not fixable? If you don't, what do you do? You've had people that you've said to the parents, "I'm sorry, I can no longer service you at TriStar Martial Arts any longer," right? And you kind of fired them.
Well, with the students, yes, but and then specifically with the instructors, because you know that's who we're kind of talking about here. Is if you've done everything that you possibly can do to help an instructor learn the framework that you
Right.
want them to operate in,
Mm-hmm.
and then follow that framework, and they're not able to do it, then eventually you have to let them go.
Yeah.
And that's super hard because they're still a student and they're an instructor.
Right.
And often is the time they'll be done as a student. I mean, that's just the way that it goes.
Yeah. Of course.
But for your sake and sanity, for the sake of the other instructors that are out there with you, and also your student body, you owe it to them and to that student who is an instructor of yours to let them go.
Yeah.
Um, Even though it's very difficult, every time that I've done it, it's been difficult. In the past, I was not good at it.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I created this framework, if you will, in our culture is if you start losing hours, then it's your responsibility to come to me and ask me why.
Right.
And for a time that worked really well, where if somebody was like, hey, I'm not getting the same hours I was getting before. Why? Okay, here's why. And my preaching to them was, if you ask me why, I'm going to tell you. And that means that gives you the opportunity to fix whatever it is that I feel like is happening or seeing.
Right.
And that was the chicken's way of avoiding confrontation until I could no longer avoid it.
Right. Right.
I'd no longer do that, but it did at least give me an opportunity in the beginning. Some people actually never came to me, and then they weren't getting any hours. And then they came back to me and said, hey, I'm going to stop, being an instructor here. I still want to train, but I got a job somewhere else.
Right.
That part worked out for me, but
Yeah.
it was still the chicken's way of
Yeah.
breaching the conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you have to always, and I've done this before for the sake of me not dealing with the situation because it was stressful or difficult. So I let it ride. And then eventually it gets to a point where it explodes, or you want to just end the relationship. Either they quit or you fire them. But it's better if you're clear with them and honest with them and say, this is the way it is. This is this. By the way, it goes back to standards, right? It's like, if you worked in McDonald's, very simple job, but you're doing making a burger, there's a standard. X amount of ketchup, X amount of mustard, a pickle, lettuce, blah, blah, blah. And you kind of move through this little chart until your burger gets wrapped up in a piece of paper. And they're exactly the same. It's not one meal has more ketchup, one has less, it's all the standards are the same. And they're worldwide standards, by the way. Like it's pretty much the same in Japan as it would be in America, as it would be in France. So there's certain things that you have to do a certain way, and I think that that's important. So here's a challenge. So I suggest to students, school owners, that they should write down some of their non-negotiables, right? Now, this could be for staff, or it could be for assistants, or it could be for students themselves. And align the staff and, the parents on the same thing. And then ask yourself the question, like, would every class feel the same, like the same school? Is it the same for teacher A and teacher B? Is it the same on Monday, Wednesday, Friday? Like, how do we run our operations so it's very standardized and everyone feels like, hey, TriStar Martial Arts, Long Island Ninjutsu Centers, they have their act together. This is a place where I'm paying a higher rate in tuition, but I'm getting a higher level of training, and my kid is going to become a better person because of it, right? And that's super important, because that's what's going to keep people in your program, right? And that's important. So
Agreed. And I would add, tag on to that, is when you come up with, some of your standards, I would, before you present them to your instructors, here's what I would do is I would present this idea to them, and I would present why you believe it's important. And then I would say, hey, I'd like you to write down 10 non-negotiables that you think are important.
I love it.
And then start discussing it as a staff, see where you agree, and then see where they're, and maybe they bring up something that you don't disagree with, but you don't think it's a top non-negotiable, and kind of discuss that as a staff, and then come up together with what you want to move forward with as the first 5 to 10 non-negotiables that are going to happen on the floor for the next 3 months.
Right.
And then revisit it after the quarter and say, hey, look, here's what our non-negotiables were. How do we do it? And you should do that every week anyways in your staff meeting. That could be part of your staff meeting, saying, okay, how did we do on the 5 non-negotiables this week?
I like it. I love it.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
you get them involved, and what that does is you get a buy-in from them, because when they come up with the idea themselves, even though you already had half of them written down anyways,
Right.
they believe that they are a part of it, which you want them to believe that and know that. And so there's this buy-in that happens. Does that kind of make sense?
No, the buy-in is everything. If you get a buy-in from the parents, they're going to listen more and adhere to the rules, right? If they understand the value. Like, I'll give you an example. Years and years ago, I had my school, my class of teenagers cleaning the dojo, right? Like, we took 10 minutes at the end of the class. We all swept and dusted and all that. So I had a parent who was like livid, upset, and said to me, I don't pay you to have my kids clean. You make the money. You should have your cleaning company do it. And I understood, like, I was about ready to explode and kick him out. And I said, do you realize why we do this? And they said, yeah, no. I said, well, we do it because we want to teach your kids responsibility. We want to teach them to keep the dojo clean. It's where they train and all that. I go, but think about it for your benefit. As a parent, shouldn't they clean their room? Shouldn't they clean after themselves? Shouldn't they put the dishes away, run the dishwasher, help with the laundry, whatever the case may be? If you're not teaching that at home, which you very well may be, then they're not going to learn it. So I'm teaching it at the school as well, to have pride in your school. And they were like, I never thought of it that way. I thought you were getting away with a free cleaning company. Like, of course they had this pessimistic mindset about it. But once they understood my motives, they were like, wow. And I said, and by the way, classically in Japan, the students clean the schools. Like, Japanese public school kids clean. There are no janitors. The kids clean. They also cook their own lunches and prepare their own food. This teaches them to be self-sufficient, right?
Yeah, and look, even if they are teaching these things at home, it's being reinforced by somebody else that they respect as well. So
I love it.
yeah. All right, so let's recap real quick. All right, if you take nothing else from today's conversation, take this. Your culture is whatever you allow repeatedly. Let me say that again. Your culture is whatever you allow repeatedly. And so when standards are based up, when and if they change based upon the person that is actually, teaching the classes, so you get the fun class with one and you get the discipline class with the other, you're going to have mixed expectations.
Right. I love it. Right, that's exactly it. So mixed expectations create boundary pushing. Like those kids who get away with murder, they're going to keep on pushing the boundaries, right? So, we create, if we allow that to happen, we create kids who test all the instructors, test us, push their parents, et cetera, right? And that's not really a great thing to do. Parents got to understand that this is something that we're doing for them. Like I think a lot of people forget that we're a team. Parents, kid, and dojo. Like we're one unit and we're here. I'm here. And I tell the kid, this is one of my favorite lines, Duane. I've been using this a lot with parents. I say, look, I am committed to making your kid a better person and martial artist. I'm going to work hard to make that happen. It's your job to do all the other stuff on the outside and tell me how it's working.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Look, and so the fix is not to remove the fun. The fix is to create consistency, these patterns that need to be in there. So like we said before, pick the non-negotiables, define what they look like, train your staff on the same, non-negotiables, the correction sequences, the formatting of the class in the same way.
Yep. And then coach your instructors and your leadership team, and and be a leader. Sometimes we are afraid to lead, right? I think that's why, and I'm not being political, but I think that's why most people hate Trump, because he is that guy who makes a decision and he makes it happen and he's going to do it. Like, that's it. He's not going to be, swayed in either direction. Some people don't like that directness and that solid commitment to what he believes his ideals are, and that's a problem. So like in our school, we have to be that leader, that that we're not bending over backwards and negotiating our standards.
Yeah, agreed. So when you're coaching your instructors like a leader, don't do it with drama. Don't, it's not a public call out, but do it with clarity, because the goal isn't to make everybody teach like you. The goal really is to make every class feel similar, not the same, but similar. Correct. So Allie already gave you the challenge this week, write down maybe the top 3 to 5 non-negotiable things for your classes, introduce them to your staff, sit down with them and get an agreement on those things, and then put them into practice.
Right. Absolutely. I think that's what, these calls, these shows, this podcast is filled with incredible stuff. We have a guy, Duane, that he wants me, actually, he does his own podcast, unrelated, a little bit martial art based, but it's just a positive, most motivational podcast. He's a fan of ours and he listens to what we do. He wants me to be on his podcast. And it's all because of what we educate people. We're teaching. This is almost like an instructor training course for school owners. Or if they have anything they need to learn about, all they have to do is go in the search bar and type it in, and it'll pop up 10 or 20 different podcasts that have information on that.
Awesome. Look, the other question I think you need to make sure you ask yourself is, if a parent watched 3 different classes this week with 3 different instructors, would it feel the same?
Right.
All right. So look, if you got value from this episode, share it with another school owner. Make sure that you connect with us at the School Owner Talk community. You can go to schoolownertalk.com, find the link to the private Facebook page there.
Yes. And please subscribe to all our pages, Facebook, our Spotify and iTunes, and give us a review if you can as well. And also to our YouTube page, which is slowly growing with more and more views, because I've been putting it up and we've been really working on the tagging and the different subject lines and the playlists and play groups. So please check it out. They're all the same. We do one episode. It's going to be on Facebook, on iTunes, and YouTube. You have a choice of those 4 or 5 different venues to watch it and listen to it.
Yes. All right, everybody. Have a great week.
All right, Duane. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I'm going to go out and shovel some snow in a minute.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Now that's a wrap. Another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk is in the vast library. We appreciate you tuning in and being part of this incredible community. A huge thank you to everyone who makes this podcast possible, including our sponsors, such as EliteInsights.com, your go-to high-performing website company for martial arts schools, LeadHunterMedia.com, your expert in digital media and content creation for martial arts schools. Add healthcoaching.com, helping school owners unlock a powerful revenue stream by providing the tools and framework to become a health coach. Thanks again for joining us. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe and share our show with other school owners and friends. See you on the next episode.